copycat music? You notice how when a musical artist becomes successful, almost instantaneously various similar artists suddenly pop up. This has been going on for as long as there's been popular music, although it may have taken a little longer in past decades. Of course, most of these artists were already around. They didn't appear overnight. It's just that if a particular artist becomes popular, others out there who sound somewhat similar are suddenly noticed. Or, and this may take a little longer, an artist may already be making music, but they just shift their style slightly, maybe adopt a mannerism or a technique to make themselves just a little bit more like a successful artist. It's perfectly understandable. Naturally, they and other people behind the scenes in the music industry, they want to cash in on a trend. They want their slice of the pie. I don't begrudge them that. Also, if you listen to music on YouTube or Spotify or whatever, the algorithm will suggest other artists that it assumes you will like because they're somewhat similar to the ones you've been listening to. I don't know about you, but if I like an artist, I most definitely don't go looking for someone who sounds the same. I think I'm attracted to artists that sound a little different. I don't even necessarily want that artist to simply keep reproducing the same thing that they've always done. That's the other thing that happens, of course. If an artist is successful, there's pressure on them to reproduce what they did before, to repeat a successful formula. Of course, there are artists who do just that, who do produce the same thing over and over. Or at least they maneuver within very narrow boundaries. And there are fans who want them to do this. Those fans can be very disappointed or angry if the next album strays too far from the formula. But then, if the next album after that returns to the safety of the formula, this will be hailed as a return to form. There are artists whose early work I like and whose later work I don't. And the other way around too, and that's fine. I'd rather an artist shifts and changes and grows than just stays in the same place, even if it means they drift away out of my range of tastes. To some extent, I suppose, all artists, whether in music or in any art form, begin by imitating others. How else do you learn? Not every new musical artist can be expected to reinvent music from scratch. The good ones, though, soon begin to develop their own style. I see the same thing in writing. Copying is fine to start with. This got me thinking about AI music, or again, any other art form. There was an item on the news tonight about Sotheby's auctioning a painting by a humanoid robot called Ada. She's painted portraits of Alan Turing, which is quite appropriate, of course. One of the paintings is expected to fetch $180,000. I'm not quite sure who actually gets that money. There's a lot of controversy about this kind of thing, particularly in music. Clearly the AI is drawing from the work of a whole range of human artists, whether in music or painting. So questions are raised about who actually owns this art. Aren't they just ripping other artists off? And the question is often asked, can AI-generated art ever actually be original? Can it even be creative? I think in some ways this is a strange question. Humans also learn by imitating others. Surely that's part of the learning process, a major part. And, as I indicated before, I suspect that all musical artists at least, but probably all artists, begin by imitating their favourite artists. They may end up combining different styles in such a way that it becomes something new. Why couldn't AI-generated art do the same thing? Is this just some kind of prejudice we have? Do we perceive this as a threat to what we regard as our uniquely human capacity for creativity? It will always be an interesting exercise to challenge ourselves to see if we can identify a work of art or a song or a novel or anything as being generated by AI rather than by a human being? Can we tell them apart? And can we do that at a rate better than just what's expected by chance? If not, and I really suspect that we can't, or we won't be able to very soon, then don't these works of art themselves pass a kind of Turing test? We want to be able to distinguish between the psychological process that we go through when we create a work of art and the process that an AI goes through when it creates a work of art. But can we really? It seems to me that in both cases our mind, or the circuitry of a robot, represents something of a black box. There's input, there's output, and something happens in between in this black box. We may be able to identify the areas of the brain which are activated during the creative process. We may even be able to stimulate them in some way to trigger the creative process. We may be able to identify the circuits and chips, whatever it may be, that are active in the robot during the creative process. And we may also be able to stimulate those in order to trigger creativity. I'm not sure that we're in a position to be able to say for certain that one of these processes is original and creative and the other is not. And I think this is only going to get more difficult over time. I wonder if we're just afraid of what this actually says about our own creative processes.